about fears. Let's talk about love. Yeah, I got fears, but I ain't got no love.
Okay, welcome back. So today what I want to talk about is tips and following up on the tips. And I've reached that point in an investigation where I start following up on tips. Today's tip is going to take us out of town, meaning out of Bellefonte, out of Zion Road area. But before I get into the specific tip and lead, I want to talk about tips in general in cold cases and how you have to be very careful in navigating said tip. For example, and today's going to be a perfect lesson. So not only am I giving you information on the Brenda Condon case, I am also hopefully educating you on cold cases and how they can be detrimental to a case and to your mental health status, and I'll explain that. So in cold cases and tips in general, through the years, so this is 33 years since Brenda Condon disappeared, rumors grow. People go out to a bar, they start drinking. Oh, you remember this cold case? Yeah, this is what I heard. And so I started this investigation, it was a week before the anniversary, so February, we'll say 15th, something like that. And I got a lot of the crazy tips in. This person told me that they'll never find her. Perfect example. I got a tip from somebody who I know personally, who is very credible. They said that their friend had heard, and that's how it always goes. A person tells me that they heard from somebody else, and this person was a DJ, that they'll never find her body. I know what happened. So it gets to me. My job is follow that up. Now, sometimes it's almost like, here we go again, okay? Because a lot of those tips never lead nowhere. Most of them, 90% of them. Maybe not as high as 95% of them. But this, you hate to say you pick and choose, but you kind of do. You kind of vet who is credible. I really, 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 on a scale of 1 to 10, a 10, trust this person's information. And I did. Who she got it from? Well, I trust her judgment. They say they got it from a DJ, and this is the person. Okay, well, I'll follow that up. Although it wasn't very specific. Hey, heard you had information. Nope, you heard wrong. I don't know anything. Okay. That's how tips work. So you will get, out of 10 tips that you get in, 8 of them will be non-credible. Like I said before, I got one, hey, she's in a vat of acid in a barrel on top of Purdue Mountain. Well, is that possible? Sure. Possible Bigfoot is camping out in my backyard right now. It's not probable. Okay? So I will not follow that up with the due diligence as I will other particular tips, such as the one we're going to talk about, the boys from out of town. So this lead started. And again, I'm telling you all of this stuff because, again, I think it is important to be transparent in investigations. Listen, when a cold case such as Brenda's goes cold, it's not in the papers except for an anniversary or something like that. The suspects begin to feel comfortable. Got away with this. Okay? because they're not feeling pressured. Nobody's talking about it. We don't want that. We want pressure on the suspects. We want them at every night before they go to bed, when they hear a noise, they're wondering, is that them? Are they coming with the search warrant? You want that pressure, that mental pressure on them. So I want to be transparent and keep this going so that they know there are people out there looking for Brenda. We haven't forgotten. Now, it's cliche for the police department spokesman to come out every anniversary and say, we have not forgotten about Brenda Condon, and we care for Brenda Condon, and we are doing everything that we are. And then they get done with the press conference and they go right back to normal duties. It's bullshit. Okay? If you cared, you will continually work the case. You will be transparent in your investigation. Hey, what did you do today? Don't just say you're working on it. Tell us. That's how the government should work. But we all know that it doesn't. It doesn't work that way. Now, again, I've been a cop for 16 years. I've worked cold cases for over 20 years. I know that there's certain aspects of the investigation that you have to keep close. I get that. That's 10% of an investigation. The other 90%, you can let the public know what you're doing. But now, I'm not saying that's the case here, but sometimes police, and I've seen it, and I've been guilty of it. That's how honest that I am with myself and with you. You hold a certain type of power. I know something that you don't know. So when you ask me, I can say, well, I can't reveal that information. Okay? That's just ego talking. You can let people know. And that's why I am doing this. So every time that I have a significant thing that I have time that I can sit down here and talk to you about, I will do it. Because I know that there's people that care. I just got off the phone with Brenda's sister first thing this morning, 2 separate phone calls where we shared a lot of information. Everything I know. Hey, this is what I found out. Found out who the doorman is, and who all of them were. They were probation officers. I found out who the cook was. I found out this lead that we're going to talk about. Found out another lead that we're going to talk about. Found out the manager of the bar. Talked to her. All these things. Because I'm being transparent. She needs to know that. So, that being said, let's get into today's topic, which is the boys from out of town. So I touched on this a little bit, I think last episode or the episode previous. What this lead was, and again, I'm only going to use first names. Now, I do that all the time. Now, people can get pissy if they want, but I feel it's unfair that people get lumped into an investigation for just because, like, they're not involved, but their name is thrown in there, and then if their name gets out into the public, then it's forever associated with this, and then people give them a queer eye. You know, they're like, wasn't he involved in the Brenda Condon investigation? We heard his name in the media. Well, we can't hire him. It's ridiculous. Some poor guy who's just working in a bar, just being a doorman, let's say, and his name gets lumped into this investigation. He goes to get a job, and they're like, weren't you mentioned in the Brenda Condon investigation? He had nothing to do with things. You know what I mean? That's one of my biggest pet peeves. It happened in the Idaho murders, and it just turned me off from true crime totally. I used to be a big fan of true crime. That's why I became a cop, became a detective. And now I don't even watch it, you know. I do cold cases and that's it. And yeah, I guess it's the same kind of, but I use first names. Just like in the book that I wrote, Gail Matthews Murders. I wrote 2 books about it. If you haven't checked that out, check it out. Go to Amazon, type in my name. You'll see my books. But after that shameless plug, I didn't use last names. Why? Because it's unfair to them. Okay? Because what people will do, yes, there are idiot people out there. They would watch this, then they would go and track these people down and start harassing them. Think of how asinine that is. But they do. So I'm not going to give them the ammunition to do that. So I'll just use first names. So I was contacted by a guy named Bob. Bob states, and these may or may not be real names, Bob states that he was told he knows these groups, this group of people that worked from out of town, but he was told specifics by a relative of his. So I go and meet Bob. Okay, Bob doesn't want to talk really on the phone. He doesn't want to give emails. He wants to have a face-to-face. Now, listen, normally I don't do face-to-faces right like that, okay? I got to hear your information. I got to vet it out. It's got to be credible. And then if I do feel that it is, then we'll meet and talk. So I felt his information was worthy. So I traveled and met with Bob. Bob tells me his story. I heard this from a relative. Well, where's your relative live? Well, not far. Well, let's just go there, right? I appreciate your information. You're giving me good info. But you heard it from somebody. I want to go to the source. Okay? So we go. Now, this is where the story gets interesting. The relative, let's say her name is Vicky. Vicky tells me, I was in my place of employment one time. I was cutting hair. And a client came, and while I'm cutting hair, we start talking like when I used to, before I cut my own hair, as you can tell, and I had hair, when I went to a barber, they'd cut my hair and they would engage you in conversation. She stated that this individual's name was Ben. And Ben said he worked in waste management. And she said, oh, my relative works in waste management as well from the area. Well, what's his name? Bob. Bob? I know Bob. And all of a sudden, now there's a mutual connection. Vicky and Ben each know Bob, who Bob had just, relayed all this information to me earlier. Ben brings up, out of the blue, about working on a project in 1991 near Snowshoe, Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Bellefonte. I mean, it's, 10 miles, 15 miles. And he says, yeah, the night that Brenda Condon disappeared, we were all in the bar that night. So my interest level is pretty high right now. Ben says to Vicky, myself, a guy named Kevin, his uncle, Al, and the foreman, Ron. We were all sent from Waste Management Incorporated to work on this project reclaiming a mine shaft area in Snowshoe. And we stayed at a hotel in Milesburg. And every morning we would drive up Route 144. And, it's been a while, but up in that area, and we would work on a project. But the night that Brenda disappeared, all four of us were in that bar. The bar being Carlsbad Tavern. Three of the individuals, Ben, Kevin, and Uncle Al, decided, yay, we've had enough. It's a Tuesday night. We're going back to the hotel. And Ron, who was classified as a womanizer, said, I'm going to stay here. He was hitting it off with the bartender, Brenda. So they left him. The next morning, they all go to the strip mine to work, and the heavy equipment machinery that they were using is moved. They're not in the same places that they were when they left work. This raised an eyebrow because nobody should be moving those objects except for the four people that were there to work. So Ben tells Vicky this and says that, hey, we suspect Ron of being involved in this murder. He matches the sketch to a T of the younger person. And that's it. That's the information I get. Okay? Now, I had that information secondhand from Bob when he told me it. He basically told me the same story, but I wanted to hear it from the source. Okay. I'm intrigued. Because the people the police made the sketch of, now granted it was 6 months later that they did this, they said they identified everybody in the bar except for one person. Well, this one person supposedly is Ron. Matches him to the T, they said. He always wore a leather jacket. This guy supposedly wore a leather jacket. Greased back black hair. He always had grease in his hair. It was little collar length. So on and so forth. So it makes sense to me why no one in the bar knew who this guy was. Because he was from out of town, right? So this is how I tip. This is the reason. This is the importance of following things up and how rumors grow. Well, what do you think? What would your first step be now? You have this information from Vicky, from Bob. What do you do with that information? Well, for me, there's a lot of things going through my mind. But you got to think small. Aim small, miss small. Okay? Sure. Initially, I'm like, okay, we got to get cadaver dogs up there at that mine. We got to do this. Whoa. Slow your roll, Kenny. Let's narrow your focus. You have to contact the individuals outside of Ron. Okay? Ron is supposedly the last person in the bar with Brenda. Supposedly. But you have Ben, who gave this information to Vicky. You have Kevin. You have Uncle Al. So you want to start on the outside, get their stories, lock them into a statement before you talk to Ron. So my focus is, okay, let's find Kevin, Al, and Ben. Finding individuals is probably the hardest part. Coming up with theories and how things happened is relatively easy once you get all the puzzle pieces, right? You have all the puzzle pieces, putting them together is relatively easy. Tracking people down and getting phone numbers or addresses for them, that's a lot harder than you think. You think it's as simple as typing in Google. But listen, those addresses that Google provides and do these things, people move at an average of 5 times in their lifetime. That's not counting the places that they rent and stay. So it's difficult. But Facebook is a tremendous resource for investigations. As much as I hate Facebook and social media, it's a godsend for investigators. It really is. Because I'm able to reach out to certain people who have connections, and see that they're connected on Facebook. And that's how I was able to get a lot of information. So the first person that I was able to connect with was Kevin. I find Kevin, call Kevin up. He debunks this lead pretty quickly. I was never in Carlsbad Tavern, ever. Yes, we were up there at a reclamation project for waste management. And we were all there, these people. I said, well, tell me the people. I don't want to tell him who I know. I want him to tell me, because he might add somebody. I don't want him to know what I know. My Uncle Al, Ben, Ron. Okay. So I know there's some truth to this. This isn't just a made up lead. There's truth to it. They were in the area. Kevin says, but I was never in there. We stayed at Milesburg in a hotel. And Ron, we suspect Ron. It was like a joke. I'm not saying Ron killed anybody. He goes, I would never say that, but I'm saying, I do remember going up after Brenda disappeared at the reclamation project, and the equipment was moved, and it actually had slipped the track. Well, me being the ignorant person that I am and don't know what that means, ask him, well, what's slip a track mean? I don't know. You guys that, operate heavy equipment would know. He said it is when the track gets caught in the mud or something and it comes off. So there are some bits that seem to fit. So I leave it at that. Okay. Thank you very much. Of course, I inquire about Ron, what type of person he was, characteristic. Would he be somebody to do something like this? I'll get into the consensus about Ron then. So Kevin doesn't know Ben's phone number. Kevin doesn't have any contact with Ron. And Kevin's Uncle Al's dead. So, down to one person, Ben. Through a mutual friend, I'm able to contact Ben. And Ben gives the same story, but different time frames. Ben says, yeah, I was never in that bar. And I stop him and say, well, I had information. You told somebody this. Remember, that's important. This stuff just didn't come out of thin air. Vicky told me that she was told by Ben. He said didn't happen. Now, he says the same story as Kevin. Hey, yeah, we were in the area. Ron, looked like the guy in the sketch. But I have no knowledge of Ron going into that bar. And I know I was never in that bar. So being off by time frame ways, what do I mean by that? I asked Kevin, did the police come and talk to you? Oh, yeah. Oh, they did. When? Oh, must have been 8 years later. They came to our job site, talked to us about it. Okay. I asked Ben the same question. Did police talk to you? Oh, yeah. When? Oh, it was a couple weeks after she disappeared. Now, that's a big difference, 8 years to a couple weeks. Because what I want to know, and I asked this, is Brenda isn't really reported missing for 4 days, 9 days, it's in the paper. How do you know, your group from out of town, know that Brenda's disappeared right away? Because Kevin told me, hey, we didn't know. We didn't ever really know she disappeared. Not until the police came. And it was a big shock to us. Ben contradicts that statement. He says, we knew within a couple of days that she disappeared. Well, how? How do you know that? He said it was in the news. Now, why is there a contradiction there? Is it just time? Or is it more nefarious? For me, I think that it's the passage of time. Because talking to both of them, I can tell you from talking to a multitude of suspects in my lifetime that they came off very genuine. Now, could I be fooled? Sure. Anybody could fool me, and it's happened before. But through 20 years of doing this, I feel confident in myself and my ability to tell whether somebody's lying to me. Now, sometimes it's hard. Or they're hiding something. I didn't get that vibe with Kevin or Ben at all. Neither of them pointed the finger at Ron, other than to say, hey, we wouldn't put it past him. Well, why? What in his history tells you that he could be capable of that? Now, listen, if they both said, we left him at that bar. Okay, well, now I'm very interested. That's why I went initially talked to these people. But that's not the case here. At least they're denying that now. Do I believe that Ben probably told Vicky that? Yes. I believe he probably did. But I don't believe it to be true. You know, it's one of those things to say, yeah, hey, we were in that bar. Can you believe that? And because they were in that area working. He's not talking to police. He's just bullshitting. And my boss, the foreman, we left him there. He was the last person to be seen with her. When in reality, it's not true. Okay? Now, what I would want to do now is take the statements that I got from these individuals and compare it to the police reports. And to see if there's the same or if there's discrepancies. If there's major discrepancies, well, then it's a lead you can't let go. You have to continue down this route, which could lead to cadaver dogs at this location. Remember, one of them still goes, he didn't retract the statement that one of the heavy equipment machinery had a slip track on it. So there could be something to it. Now, I've had a very difficult time tracking down any information about Ron. So what's the first thing I want to do after I get this information? Do I just say, well, it's all bullshit now? Throw it away. No, you don't do that. Okay, well, let's look into Ron. Let's figure out what type of person he is. Let's run his criminal history. Let's see if he's had any ag assaults. Let's see if he's had any sexual assaults. I find nothing. I find nothing on him. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it just puts him off this lead off to the side a little bit right now. Okay? Now, I want to find pictures of Ron. I'd like to talk to Ron and figure out, was he ever in Carlsbad Tavern? The police know this because the police went and talked to them. Now, this is my $1,000,000 question. How did the police come up with their names in order to go out of town to their work site to interview them? Whether it was 8 years later or it was a couple weeks later, somehow they got their name. And I would like to know how. Originally, I thought, well, maybe they used a credit card in there, but 1991, most of it's cash, but it's possible. Who gave them the name? Ron. Or Al, or Kevin, or Ben. The boys from out of town. How did they stumble onto them? It was either very good police work or somebody came forward. Now, Vicky says, hey, I did, because I certainly asked her, hey, what did you do with this information? Am I the first person you told? She said, no. I told police. I told police. They came out and interviewed me, and I don't know what they did after that. Well, I can tell you what they did after that. They went and interviewed these guys. So she did the right thing. But I want to use this as a learning experience so you realize how tips, how leads, how rumors are like a black cloud, and you have to sort through them to get to the facts. I am going to do an episode, because it's very important, of fact versus fiction in this case. I just recently, I told you how much I don't like social media. Listen, I hate comments. People that have watched me for the past 2 years on this channel know that. That's why I don't have comments on my YouTube channel. I just don't like them. Because everybody has an opinion, and some of them are just makes me do this, shake my head. So on Facebook, somebody had made a comment because I had interviewed a vendor, okay? And the vendor said that they went in, the place was empty, put the money in the bar. Remember that episode? And he had told me that he had worked for Garbrick Amusement. So on Facebook, I put a picture and said, Garbrick's Amusement. And people want to get bent out of shape and say, get your facts straight, exclamation point. Well, listen, number one, you come at me with the wrong tone, okay? It's very difficult to ascertain tone through comments. But, when you use an exclamation point or something like that, I kind of know what kind of tone you're pointing. And I don't put up with people's shit. First of all, I vet all information. Period and end of story. And if it's something that somebody told me, so remember when you comment, the number one thing is to be respectful. I think social media has just made it way too easy and common for people to run their mouths without repercussion. Okay? And that's number one, first and foremost. I like to stay as professional as I can. And that's Kenny 2.0. The old version before the update of Kenny, I like to snap back into that mode sometimes. The people that know me growing up know what I mean. But I digress. I don't even know how I got that rant of the comments. I just don't like comments. Anyhow, this is a good example of how rumors just get spread. Okay? There's parts of truth to almost every rumor. Okay? But you got to get the whole story. It appears to me that there's part truth in this. Those boys were in town and they were working. But, and they were in town for a couple months. So it would make sense that they would venture out. Now, Carlsbad Tavern is only 5 minutes away, 5 miles away, probably 12 minutes away from the hotel that they were staying. So it makes sense that they would venture there. Well, according to at least Kevin and Ben, they never did. But Ron, more than likely, did, according to them. But they had no first-hand knowledge of it. Now, whether they're just saying that because they don't want involved, I didn't get that feel from them. I felt that they were genuine and they were honest with me. And you get that feel as an investigator. I could be totally wrong, but now I'm not going to ignore the lead. Okay? Got to dig into Ron a little bit more. And certainly would like to talk to him if I can ever track him down. So that is the Boys from Out of Town episode. I talked to Iris about this morning. She knew nothing about it. Now why? The police have this information. Is it because it's this being out jeopardizes? No. This doesn't jeopardize the investigation at all, or I wouldn't be putting it out there. What it will do is generate more talk. Oh, I know exactly who he's talking about. Let me send Kenny a picture of what Ron looked like. Oh, this is his phone number. Kenny can now call him. That's what this is for. That's what this is about. Moving this case forward, keeping it out in the public. Okay? And letting people know. I can sit here and say Brenda is not forgotten. It's not cliche for me to come out every year to say Brenda's not forgotten. Doing all this on my own accord because Brenda is not forgotten. Okay? Understand that. I wouldn't put up $5,000 of my own money for a reward for information of Brenda's remains if I didn't care and if I wasn't passionate about it. So, with that said, stay tuned to the next episode. Not sure what it's going to be yet. I got some feelers out there. Some more tips. Some more interviews, possibly. I found the manager. I found a worker. I found kitchen. It's amazing to me how some of these people said they were never interviewed by police, though. That boggles my mind. But like Iris told me this morning, hey, we know now more than we ever have. So that's the goal. The family deserves that. They deserve it. Silence is not... Listen, I love silence. Solitude is my friend. But in cold cases, silence is your enemy. Okay? You need people to keep it out there and to talk. I've learned that, hey, sometimes they won't come and talk to you, but if you knock on their door or you send them a message, they're more than happy to share what they got. All those pictures that I got of Carls Bad Tavern, okay, after Brenda disappeared. Years after, but 4 years later, of the inside of the bar that the owner sent me. I'm so humbled and I have such great respect and admiration for them to take their time to do that for not just me, for Brenda and the investigation. They didn't have to, and they did. It shows that the community cares, and that's important as well. So I'll quit rambling on. You guys got more important things to do. I got to get back to investigating. So thanks for watching this episode of Brenda Mystery at Carlsbad Tavern. And until next episode, Mains out.